You may have come across the YouTube shorts that we have, which are sort of short, sharp answers to questions. Um, but sometimes we get asked questions that you can't answer so quickly. There's just a bit more going on behind the scenes that you want to talk about. And this is the case here. So the question that was asked is, what is the difference between Taiji and Qigong? And we can be very short and glib about it and say, well, Tai Chi is a martial art and Qigong is a big bucket of practices that will help you to become more skillful with your energy. That's the difference. But it's not really that helpful. I think we need to understand that the question is probably more directed at not at what are the origins or the dictionary definition, but if I were to choose to go to a Tai Chi class or if I were to choose to go to a Qigong class, what is the difference between these classes? And that's actually a far more difficult question to answer. And we need to look, instead of pointing at the origin of Tai Chi as a martial art, we need to recognize that the way it's come into the West, it's merged into a health practice. We can talk about, have a Google of Sophia Delzer and Gerda Getz. It's a really interesting piece about how these people who were both trained dancers and were arguably the first people to bring Tai Chi into the West, learnt Tai Chi in 1949 in China. Um, and then you kind of go, it makes sense why it was presented traditionally the way that it was. It makes sense that people engage with it as a well-being practice, and it makes sense that the martial aspects that sit within it were very much kept secret, and there was kind of inner door aspects to the Tai Chi schools. But I think over time we've seen more of the application, more of the martial application of Tai Chi come through. And there's a better understanding of where the systems come from and how they apply in a martial context. And there's also good quality studies about how Tai Chi is now used within a well-being context. But as it's not at its heart a well-being practice, it's difficult to align Tai Chi to the underlying philosophies that sit within Chinese medicine. And again, there's some interesting bits here. Traditional Chinese medicine is not that old. Don't get fooled by the term traditional. It's a reimagining of the classical Chinese medicine. And the classical Chinese medicine is a far more intricate system in many ways. Uh, it's an adaptation that made it socially acceptable, it made it relevant at the time. But a lot of the Qigong goes back into the traditional instead of the classical. So again, there's an argument that possibly the Qigong that we see nowadays is also compromised in this space. But we have movements within Qigong that directly relate into the Chinese medicine theories. We have movements within Qigong that directly relate back into the spiritual traditions, the Taoist and the Buddhist traditions. And we also have schools that go back into the martial practices. So it sounds as if Qigong is a far better thing to study from a rounded point of view, but it's not. And I'll tell you why it's not. Because there is no Qigong teacher out there who can teach you authoritatively around all of these aspects. I've been in this world for quite a long time. I have never met any Qigong teacher, even though they'll say they can, who honestly can. Everybody will have their own mix of interests. So some people will be more interested in the wushu, in the iron shirt work, and less interested in the applications going back into classical Chinese medicine. Some people will be deeply involved in the spiritual practice, and they'll have sort of an idea of the martial. Everybody has their own perspectives. And so it's important when you're going and finding a class to find out what's going to be taught in it and to find out whether it really makes your heart sing. And whether it's called Tai Chi or whether it's called Qigong, it's about, does it meet your needs? Does it do something incredible for you? Ultimately, all of this can be looked at as Qigong. It's all ways of becoming more skillful with your energy. So it's really a question about how do you want to become more skillful with your energy? I hope that helps. I feel as if I've gone blah, 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 way too long. So I'll stop taking your time and just say thank you very much. I hope you find this interesting. If you do, then please subscribe. There'll be lots more YouTube shorts coming out. If you have any questions, please post them and we will get around to answering them. So thank you very much. Thank you.